All right. Well, welcome to this webinar. My name is Chris Cook. I'm the product manager for the HawkWare group here at HawkWare's Systems. Just as an introduction to our group, we are the custom software development arm of HawkWare's. We write applications to work with PDM and with SOLIDWORKS, and then even other desktop applications if needed to help those our customers kind of better use the software they've already invested in. So what we're going to see today is a discussion around one of those products, and we've got some others that we can mention later if needed. So the topic of this is preventing notification numbness. Get some input from our customers, or especially our PDM customers, that well, the notifications are great for letting everybody know as how files are moving and progressing through the workflow. It can be easy for users to get overwhelmed with the amount of them that are coming through, especially if there's a group of users, like more than one, that at some point need to review something, and some have and some haven't, and we don't know which. And so as it sits there and waits, they keep getting notified, and so they have to remember, did I already approve this or not? And so we wanted to create an application or a way to kind of help solve this, make sure that we can notify the right people every time, and not send out notifications to people that don't need to see them. So some of the challenges, specific challenges that we run across, or that at least are communicated to us. The first is that notifications in PDM, apart from the ones that you subscribe to as a user, are workflow centric, meaning that they're defined as files go through the workflow. The workflow triggers them, and so often, especially in our engineering and design groups, the process is the same for most of the documents, like the general process for how documents walk through. Where the workflows can get complicated is if different people need to be engaged with those documents depending on what they are. And so sometimes we'll see duplicate workflows that are really a mirror of the same process, but with different permissions, different notifications, different transition actions set up because the people involved are different as it moves through. And so that can sometimes be a challenge when it comes to configuring the notifications. They're configured in transitions. A transition is where we decide which users, which groups. Is it a dynamic transition or a notification? There's some great controls in there for only send it to the last person that transitioned the file. If things are going to loop through quite often. But if we have the same kind of general limitation with the workflow, where we've got a lot of different types of files that have different people responsible for them going through the same process, I may have to create multiple transitions to accommodate distributing the notifications properly. If we use the dynamic option to select which users get the notification, we do have in recent last couple releases have an option where you can now search your list of dynamic recipients, which is nice for those are our customers that have long lists of PDM users. But the selections don't persist. So if I submit something for review and I select a number of users dynamically, and then it gets kicked back for some more edits and I want to resubmit it, I have to go pick those same users again. It doesn't remember that they were the ones that got the last notification. There's no kind of history of that maintained within the vault. It's just kind of the way it's architected. So I need a better way to assign who's important relative to this document and have that persist. And then there's a lot of notification templates for various different notification types that PDM would generate. They're all HTML based, and they're all stored inside the program files directory for each of the user's machines. So they are editable, but maintaining those edits and making sure they get distributed properly and that they're maintained after upgrades can sometimes be a challenge. And so if you're not within a system where your email allows those hyperlinks and actions that happen inside those special email templates, then they can kind of be wasted in that regard and not necessarily as useful as they could be. So we created an add-in called HawkWare Custom Notifications. Again, it came out as directly from customer requests. We've just recently done a kind of a major overhaul to it, which is the one you're going to see today. This works for SOLIDWORKS PDM Professional, formerly known as Enterprise PDM. It does not work with SOLIDWORKS PDM Standard. No add-ins do, and that's just a limitation of Standard. It doesn't have any access to the API, so we can't automate anything. But as part of this architecture, it also supports tasks. So we can also leverage tasks to send out reminder notifications if things hang out in a state too long. And so we'll get to see specific examples or direct examples of these kind of as we move along. So how exactly does custom notifications address the challenges that we just kind of talked about? Well, instead of being workflow centric, we design the application to be file centric. We're going to leverage the data card variables, which are persistent, that are assigned to every file and folder within your vault to determine who gets those notifications. And by doing that, we get to kind of leverage the power of what you've already built in your folder data cards. Right? If you've got lots of different projects, for example, and those projects have very specific people that are in charge of them, project managers, lead engineers, those types of roles, and they're different for each project, then you can take that information that you may already be generating on those project data cards and push them down into the files and use those to decide who gets to notification. Since files data cards are specific to file extensions and different areas of the vault, you end up with a lot more flexibility. So the process can stay the same with the workflow, but who gets notified could be very different. When we configure custom notifications, we use a destination state as the trigger. So when a file lands in a state, that's when our notifications get kicked off. By doing that, we don't have to reset up the same sort of notification architecture for every transition that may feed into that state. We just have to do it once for the state. We could do multiple settings, multiple kind of state triggers if we need to. So if we have different groups that may need to get notified differently as it lands in a state, that's fine, that's supported. But this kind of simplifies how we set up the transitions. Since we're leveraging card variables, and this is file-centric, those dynamic lists of people that we select for a given file will persist. So no matter how many times it loops through that workflow, if I haven't changed the data card, the same people are going to get notified and be part of that process. And since it's a card variable, you could decide, is this an editable field? So it can be changed at a later time if it needs to. Again, that's kind of flexible based on your process. And in this version of the add-in, we implemented a rich text template editor. So for each of these states, and as well as these delayed reminders, you can define a template. And in the template, you'll define things like the subject line, what do you want to say, what do you want the body to look like. It's all, again, rich text, so you can control the font sizes and colors and orientation. And then we're going to give you a list of the files that went through the transition. And in addition to the list of files, we'll allow you to select card variables for those files that you want to see in that transition. And we're going to see all of this stuff live, so it's kind of giving you a heads up on what we're going to look at. So the templates was a big request that got implemented in this release. And when it comes to those card variables, one of the other things that we added to it in this release was the support for groups. So if I want a list of groups versus a list of users, I can distribute to an entire group at a time if I need to. So let's take a look at how this is configured live. So you have a couple areas that we want to look at. Start with the administration tool here and the workflow. Now this is the kind of the out-of-the-box, pretty simple workflow. And you'll notice that I don't have any notifications. There would be a little bell icon next to anyone that had one. So I'm using my custom notifications to do them all. Now that may not necessarily be accurate, right? You probably use a combination of them. Some states, like for example, things that go into the approved or released state, may always have the same people that get notified. So the operations groups and users for purchasing or whoever may get a notification every single time. And there's no reason necessarily to use our add-in to facilitate that. So you can certainly mix and match them. But in my case, I want to set up custom notifications for anything that goes into this waiting for approval state and anything that goes into change pending approval. These are where my my subject matter experts need to know about specific files and how they get moved or how they get approved. So I'll need the states, and then I'll also need a place in the data card to contain the users. So again, I'm going to use a simple example here. I've got a lead engineer and a project manager. Both of these are drop lists, and they're both SQL lists for members of a specific group. So my lead engineers group has its users, and then my project managers group has its users as well. And but this could be a list of groups. What we see quite often with this application is that these lists may be departments. We might have, and so each department may have a designated user that's responsible for a given file. What's nice about the way we've architected this is that not all of these need to have a value. If I have 10 departments on my data card and I only pick two of those to have a recipient, then only those two get an email and there's no errors. That's just how we architected it. It helps you be a little more flexible. You can design the card for what's the maximum possible number of departments that need to be involved, and then you can assign those that are just necessary. So then in the add-in, you'll have this HawkWare custom notifications, and we'll distribute it as a CEX file, so it's pretty easy to drag and drop and add it to your vault. Once you do, you right-click and go to Settings. And there's two tabs in the settings. Our message settings are where we define the states and who gets notified and what templates to use. And then our template editor is how we define what the message looks like. So I've got 4 templates designed here. I've got 2 for delayed state reminders and then 2 for my actual states. So if we take a look at one of these, on the left, uppermost area is our rich text message body, and you can format, you have justification options, you've got color options, sizes of your fonts, that sort of thing. You define what the subject line is. At the bottom of this message is always going to be a list of the files that went through the transition, and we're going to collect a list of the files if there's more than one. Like if I take 20 documents and I transition them once, and half of those documents are going to one user and half are going to another, those 2 users are going to get a list of 10 documents that just went through that transition instead of 10 emails. So those are going to show up at the bottom. So that's why I put a documents here with a header. Then I'll get my list. If there are other variables that I want to see, then I can select these variables down here. So these are other properties associated with those files that'll get listed. So you can hit the refresh preview and we give you kind of a little glimpse of what it's going to look like. You just throw in some random text here. So you get the list of files, and then here are all of the properties that I've associated with those files that will show up in that email as well. And I can create as many of these templates as I wish. Once I've set it up the way I want, I hit the Save button and that saves it, and it shows up there in my list. So I can have slightly different ones for the ones that are delayed versus the ones that are, so this is a reminder, that's a delayed review, but same idea. You can format it the way I want with those values. And then to assign them to a state, we go into our message settings, and I'm going to go ahead and add one. I've just got one right in here right now for waiting for approval. I'll add one for change pending approval. So I just hit add. Pick your workflow if you've got more than one. Select the state you want to assign it to. You use change pending approval. Select the template from the list that you want to assign it to. This is my change approval template. If I want it a delayed in state, I check the box, and then I select the template that's relevant to a delayed reminder, and then how long I want it to, how long to wait before I send those reminders out. We put 1 to 7 days just because that's the most common. And then variables in this list will be the recipients. So who on my data card am I sending these messages to? So it could be, again, your departments. Just depends on what you're calling this variables that you want on your data cards. So in my case, we're sending them down to the lead engineer and the project manager. So I'll review my settings there. It looks good. I'll hit add, and now that's part of my list. So now both of these transitions will trigger a notification. So I'll save it, close my settings. So if we go into our vault, and this one's, again, just fairly simple for illustration purposes. Got some files in here. This one's change pending approval. I'm going to change the state. I'm going to push it back. Check it out, and then I'll assign some users to it. So we'll send the assign the lead engineer to Joan, and the project manager to Luke. Save it, and check that in. If I transition this now, right, I will have triggered this these notifications to these users. So I'm going to log in as Joan and see what this looks like. And we should see a notification pop up here at the bottom. I'll go to the inbox. Oh, there we are. It says I have 2 notification messages. So we'll let this load, and then we'll see them formatted just like our templates. We'll have our list of documents with their properties. And you notice it tags it with the user that was logged in that did the transition. Rather than it always coming from the same like PDM system administrator, it actually comes from a person. So there's that file that we transitioned, and the properties that I put in place. And there was one from earlier that came from this user. So if you want to know if this application is going to work in your case, right? There's a couple questions that may help, determine that. Do you have a wide range of users, different, subject matter experts, right, that are potential reviewers or stakeholders in your process? Right? Is it not the same people every time that are always doing these things, but a wide range of people? Does the content of your notifications matter, right? Is the one that's provided with PDM not necessarily meeting your needs, or maybe has a bunch of links that are security concerned because of email, right, and how that works, and you want to be able to format what's shown in those notification templates? Do you have a very complicated workflow because of notifications? This could be a way to simplify that workflow and get it down to a more manageable number of states and transitions, or even number of workflows for that matter, if we can distribute the notifications in a more intelligent way. And then if you have a lot of different groups, for example, a lot of different, each project has a different subset of your engineering team that's responsible for it, and you want to be able to more easily facilitate, distributing notifications to just the team that's responsible for that particular project. And maybe this is the add-in to help with that. You can select those users when you're creating those projects as part of the project template, and then have that information pushed down automatically to any file that gets dropped in there. And custom notifications will send it to just those team members every single time. And just as a reminder, we don't have to substitute one set of notifications for another. The ones that are built into the workflow may work perfectly well in some situations. Again, things that get released may always go to operations. No need to set up a custom notification for that. But certainly if we've got dynamic team members involved, then then we're a better fit. But they aren't mutually exclusive. Okay, we had a question from Jason. He's asked, what is the cost for the feature set? It's on our website. I believe it's $14.95. I should have memorized that before I started. per a site, right? So it's just a one cost for the entire vault, and then that includes the first year's worth of maintenance. And then we've got a second year maintenance subscription to kind of keep it up to date, make sure that it it works with every new release. Generally, SOLIDWORKS is pretty good about not breaking API calls from release to release, just adding new ones. But there may be new features that we want to leverage, new ways to interact and trigger things. So it's always good to try to revisit those for each major release. If it looks intriguing and you want to get more information, there's websites. We have HawkWareApps.com that we created because the HawkWare team is actually a SOLIDWORKS solution partner. We have a booth at SOLIDWORKS World every year. We have our own website. We have a number of applications there that are free as well, free add-ins that you can try out and download. And then we've got information, videos, downloads related to these purchased apps as well, along with their pricing. HawkWare'sys.com just went through a nice revamp on their website. You can find the information about HawkWare there. We have a YouTube channel for HawkWare, in addition to the HawkWare Systems YouTube channel. So most of the product videos are available there as well. And then, of course, if leverage your relationship with your HawkWare Systems representative, you call them toll-free in the US and Canada. If any of our applications, including this one, is close to what you need, but maybe it needs to needs a few new features, or needs something turned off, or it just needs tweaked a bit to fit your specific environment, by all means, reach out to us and let us know. Most of these, again, have come from customer requests, so they were built from a specific set of specifications. So we're always happy to create custom variations of them. For some of them, we have a lot of variations. This one is one of those. So thank you for joining. If you've got any other questions, feel free to put them in the question box there. I'll be happy to answer them. If not, then you can absolutely contact us through email, or again, you can talk to your representative and your sales manager, and they'd be happy to set up a demonstration or further discussions to see if it fits your situation. All right. Well, looks like that's it. Thanks again for joining, and have a great day.